let's do a elf capital. Woo! An elf capital. Oh, I love it. I love the idea of making an elf capital. I love it. All right. Now, when I think of elves, I generally think of like a giant tree, and it's a capital, right? So when I think of a capital, I generally think of a kind of large, it's got a main structures, it's got a lot of buildings, it's the central place, you know, where this elf group or clan or dynasty or whatever it is it might be, you're going to want to find like a large tree. Now, I think, unfortunately, there is not a world tree in the isometric style, and I know naughty Inkarnate, we're going to have to fix that problem. So it's going to look really weird if I kind of use this large tree right here because it's flat. You see how flat that is? And then if I apply a kind of a, isometric stamp to it, it's going to look really freaking weird. At least I think it will. Actually, it might work. I don't know. It might work. We'll see. We'll see. But my idea is probably to create a large world tree. And then we could have it maybe have some water underneath it, and the roots are going underneath of it. And we could have some buildings that are kind of on the islands around the tree. So we can kind of do that kind of stuff. So there's like we can kind of come up with an interesting POI that will really catch the eye. It's a capital, right? You want it to be imposing. You want it to be special. You want it to be Bob Ross. Yeah, groups can be really complicated. I totally understand. I'm sorry that I'm not really responding too much in the chat. It's just that we have so much to do. And I'm glad that Cheryl and Philip are answering all of your important questions. Okay, so let's do capital, right? I think the front-facing tree might work. It might be okay. You might have to do some things, but I think this is a good start. So we'll go ahead and create the main tree, and we're going to think about what kind of things to add. So I'm going to think about, let's go ahead into the catalog real quick and see what kind of our options are. Like, do we want the tree to be on top of something? Maybe it's in like a whirlpool, like below. So I put the stamp below, and that whirlpool is what keeps this capital safe. So there's like a whole bunch of options that you can kind of choose from. I kind of like this idea of kind of a swirling torrent. And I'm going to go to the transform tool. It seems so kind of a little too much isometric even for this flat stamp. So we might want to change the height just a little bit. And that way it kind of blends in a little bit better. So you have this nice torrent that is basically protecting the base of the tree. The only way to really attack this elven capital is if to do it by an airship or a dirigible or a blimp. Okay, it's the only way to really access this. Otherwise, you're just going to get caught up in this torrent and get smashed against the tree or launched out somewhere. Okay, so you can't really get to this place. All right, so now we're going to want to think about putting something on top of the tree. And there's kind of these nice buildings right here. I kind of like this blue one right here, this Elven Capital. This is a nice big building. It's pretty large. I'm going to make sure it's put up a layer, and I'm going to put it on top of the tree like this. And I know the angle is like a little off because you could see a little bit. You wouldn't be able to see this part of like all of these branches right here. It's front facing. So the perspective is a little off here. So we're going to have to do things to what's called force perspective. We're going to force our eyes to adjust so that by adding stamps to make it look like it's not front facing. Because at the moment we don't have an isometric world tree. We absolutely need to do that. I'll make sure to request that in an art meeting because I do think we should add a lot more to the world style. And I know I'm not the only one. I know that Philip would agree with that. Okay, so now that I've added that, I probably want to add in some more things to kind of make it look more isometric instead of front facing. So there are some fun things you can do. You could throw in some trees that are growing, maybe little trees or bushes that are growing up from here. So like if I want, I can even put some smaller trees up here, and I can kind of line some of the building so it's not so flat in the front, and I'm kind of forcing it. So by adding more stamps, I'm forcing the eye to focus more on an isometric perspective instead of the front-facing, overwhelming front-facing perspective that this has. You know what I mean? So I'm going to go ahead and add a couple of this. I'm even going to hide this entrance right here with a tree in front of it because I think that's kind of like, that's not how you get in there. There are probably other ways. And so we'll add that. So that looks pretty good. That's okay so far. We're going to want to add more things at the bottom, probably to kind of create more isometric, because it looks isometric at the top, but it still seems flat at the bottom. So we're going to want to add a couple things at the bottom. Someone had mentioned ruins. If there's a giant torrent down there, you're going to expect any kind of structures that were down there are probably going to be broken, right? Now, there aren't any isometric ruins that I know of, actually, for the style. Ooh, more lacking. There aren't that I know of. So instead, we're going to have to use the 2D ones, the flat-facing ones, unfortunately. So we've got to try to find ruins. I think there was one right here. So there's these ruins right here. And we might even have to change the color. I don't know. Let's just go ahead and bring these down to size. And let's just put them down and see how they look first. So I'll put one here, maybe another one right here. And I'm going to put them where the line work is, maybe just for fun. Right there. And we'll put maybe one behind the tree. Let's make sure that it's down a layer. Okay, go down a layer. One moment. There we go. So we're going down a layer. So we got some ruins at the base there. So it looks like that torrent is kind of stripped away a lot of those buildings. And I know that it's supposed to be just isometric, but it's okay to throw in the 2D. It's just to make sure that when you're cross-matching those stamps, that you have to find a way to make it pleasing and to make it to make sure that it kind of comes together in a proper composition. So it's okay to mix the flat and the isometric, but it is a bit tricky, okay? So you'll have to think about the overall composition. So I'm going to go ahead and put these together. Let's go ahead and make it a bit bigger. This is a capital. So there's a kind of a lot going on here. So let's put a big one in here like this. And there are some other options you can go with. Let's say that you don't just want one main foliage. Maybe we want to put a couple together. So what happens if I made a separate branch like this, like that, and make sure you put the line work together. So there's a separate branch right there. Let's say that I want to add in maybe another branch over here, or over here, or in the back somewhere. I can go like this and then put it a layer behind like that, and then drop the brightness just a little bit to show that it's behind. Or you can flip it like this and just use the foliage itself to kind of create more. So drop that brightness like that, and it will look like it's in the background like that. You can put it behind here if you want. It's up to you. You can put some trees right here. You can copy, paste, put another one right here, maybe even rotate it. So that way it kind of gives a little bit more foliage to the tree. And so there's not just one giant green bush. There's a couple branches and foliage that's coming out. And that way it just kind of makes it look a little bit more dynamic and nice, right? So there's that part. Now, let's say that we want to add a little bit more. You want to say that we want to put in maybe a couple more buildings. So we can put maybe a building on top of these two dark ones if we want. So let's go back into the catalog and just kind of pick a stamp that we want. There are these nice ones right here. This looks nice. Let's just use this one right here, and I can put it one on top right here. Whoa, now that looked like a bug to me, and I'm glad I could share that with you all. Oopsie, I think I actually need to save here in a moment. So we'll do that in just a moment. First, let's just go ahead and see if I can put this on top. So there's one there. In fact, this is so similar to these other ones. Let's actually pick a different one. That way it looks a little bit more unique. Let's go with maybe adding in, I kind of like this one right here. You could maybe add in a fountain in the background. So just put that one on top like that. And we're going to bring it down a layer. And of course, we'll have to take that tree and bring that down a layer. There we go. So you have a little bit of a fountain there with some fencing, and then we can put another one on top in the background. So let's do that as well. Let's say, let's use, we could go with this one right here. Looks okay. Let's just put that one on the corner here, just like that. On the top, oh, I have to go up a layer. There we go. So that way there's a little bit more going on than just that main piece, right? And you might want to even consider dropping the brightness of this down since it's on a kind of a little bit in the background. There we go. I think that looks okay. I think that looks pretty good. You could do some other things. If you want, you could ring the torrent with trees around it to make it look like the torrent stops at a certain point. So we would have to go up a layer. Let's just go ahead and just drag a bunch of trees around like this, and it will kind of look like these trees are kind of going around, so it's kind of like framing it, which looks kind of nice. Oopsie, I want to select those and bring that down a layer so it's behind the tree, obviously. There we go, much better. And we'll add a couple over here, one here, and I think that's it. Let me move these ones a little bit further in. Bring them a little bit more further in. There we go, like that. And I think that looks okay. And I'm going to go ahead, as always, I'm going to group these babies. There we go. And we're going to call it a elf city. Or, I'm sorry, I think it's a capital, actually. Elf capital. There we go. Got it. Elf capital. Nice. Yeah, that looks pretty cool. I mean, you could add a lot more to this. You could add buildings all along here. You could put some stuff, like you could have put a building like on top of this main lump